Emily Parker thought it was just another evening ride with her husband Daniel. The winter air was crisp, and the snow sparkled beneath the fading sunlight. Sitting in her wheelchair, bundled in a thick coat, Emily clung to the hope that Daniel still cared. At 7 months pregnant, with her legs paralyzed from a car accident months ago, she felt vulnerable, but trusted the man she once believed would protect her at all costs. Daniel's voice was unusually sweet that night. "I know you've been stressed, Emily. Let me take you out to breathe some fresh mountain air. It will help both you and the baby." His smile looked warm, but behind it hid a secret, darker than the night sky. Emily, though tired, agreed. She still wanted to believe in the marriage that had once felt unbreakable. The car wound through the silent forests of Colorado, far from town. Emily felt uneasy. The further they drove, the fewer lights she saw, until the only glow came from the headlights and the pale moon. "Daniel, why are we going so deep?" she asked softly, her voice trembling. He squeezed her hand and replied smoothly, "Trust me, sweetheart. You'll love the peace out here." But his eyes fixed on the road were cold and distant. When the car finally stopped, Daniel quickly pulled her wheelchair from the trunk and helped her out. The forest loomed around them, tall and shadowed, the silence broken only by the rustle of unseen creatures. Emily felt her chest tighten. Something wasn't right. "It's freezing out here," she whispered, rubbing her arms. "Can't we just go home?" He crouched down, his face close to hers, but his tone was sharp. "Emily, you'll be fine. Just stay here for a while. I'll be right back." Her heart skipped. "Wait, where are you going?" Panic edged her voice. Daniel stood tall, his eyes full of something she couldn't recognize anymore. "I need to take care of something. Don't worry. You're strong, Emily. Stronger than you think." Before she could protest, he turned and walked back toward the car. Emily's heart pounded as she tried to wheel herself after him, but the snow made the chair heavy and stubborn. Tears blurred her eyes as she watched him slide into the driver's seat. "Daniel? Please don't leave me here," she screamed, her voice echoing through the frozen trees. For a moment, he sat still. She thought maybe, just maybe, he would step out and laugh it off as a cruel joke. But then the engine roared to life. The headlights cut through the trees, and with a spray of snow, the car disappeared down the road, leaving Emily alone in the freezing wilderness. Her breath came in ragged sobs as she realized the man she loved, the father of her unborn child, had abandoned her to die. The forest pressed in, dark and merciless, and in the distance, she heard the chilling sound of a wolf's howl. She was alone, defenseless, and the night had only just begun. The silence after Daniel's car disappeared was heavier than the snow pressing down on the branches. Emily's cries still echoed faintly, swallowed by the vast forest. Her hands shook violently as she gripped the frozen wheels of her chair. The icy air bit into her lungs, every breath sharp like needles. Her heart screamed that this was no accident. No mistake, Daniel had left her here to die. Her mind raced back to the promises he had made when she was lying in the hospital after the car accident that took her ability to walk. "I'll never leave you, Emily. You're my world." She remembered those words so clearly, yet now they felt like ashes. How could the man she trusted with her life, the father of her unborn child, treat her as nothing more than a burden? She tried to wheel herself forward, but the snow was thick and unforgiving. The chair's wheels sank, and every push felt like climbing a mountain. Her arms burned, but the chair barely moved an inch. Panic clawed at her chest. She was 7 months pregnant, with no phone, no food, and no one around for miles. Her eyes darted through the darkness. The forest felt alive, watching her, closing in. The howl she had heard earlier returned, closer this time. Her blood turned cold. She knew wolves roamed these woods. She remembered reading news about hikers attacked in remote areas. Now she was weaker, slower, more vulnerable than anyone. "Please, God," she whispered through chattering teeth. "Don't let me die out here, not like this." Her belly tightened with the movement of her baby. The little one kicked as if sensing her fear. Emily placed a trembling hand over her stomach. "I'm so sorry, sweetheart," she whispered, tears streaming down her face. "I'll find a way. I promise I'll keep you safe." But deep down she wondered if she could keep that promise at all. A snap echoed in the distance, like a branch breaking under weight. Emily froze. Her breath caught. She turned her head toward the sound, but the shadows revealed nothing. Then came another sound, a low growl, rumbling, primal. Her pulse raced. She tried again to move the wheelchair, fighting the snow, desperation fueling her. "Come on, please, just move," she begged, pushing with all her strength. The chair lurched forward a few inches, but it wasn't enough. The growl came again, this time closer. Her throat tightened. She could almost feel eyes staring at her from the tree line. Her mind screamed for Daniel, though she knew it was useless. "Daniel, help me," she cried into the night, her voice cracking. Only silence answered, silence, and then the sharp crunch of footsteps in the snow. Her tears blurred her vision, but she could see a shape moving between the trees. Too big to be a rabbit, too silent to be human. The hairs on the back of her neck stood up. Emily's chest rose and fell rapidly, every second heavier with dread. The baby kicked again, a sharp reminder of what she had to fight for. Her voice broke into a sob. "Please, somebody, anybody, help us." And then from the darkness, glowing eyes appeared, watching her every move. The glowing eyes pierced through the shadows, unblinking, fixed on Emily. Her chest tightened as her breath turned shallow. She clutched the armrests of her wheelchair, whispering broken prayers under her breath. The forest, already cold and terrifying, now felt like a cage closing in on her. A low snarl echoed, vibrating through the trees. Emily's pulse pounded in her ears. She knew it wasn't just one creature. More growls followed, circling her from different directions. Her throat went dry. Wolves hunted in packs. She was surrounded. "Stay back," she cried, her voice trembling, tears freezing on her cheeks. She waved her arms weakly, as if her fragile movements could ward off predators. But the shadows moved closer. The crunch of paws in the snow became louder, nearer. Suddenly, a shape lunged forward, a massive wolf, its fur bristling, teeth glinting under the moonlight. Emily screamed, gripping her stomach as pain shot through her body. She tried to push the wheelchair backward, but the wheels jammed in the snow. She was stuck, completely exposed. The wolf snapped its jaws inches from her legs. She kicked weakly with her paralyzed foot, but the motion was useless. Another wolf appeared on the opposite side, snarling. Their eyes burned with hunger, and the scent of her blood, the faint trace from scratches she hadn't noticed, drew them closer. Her body shook violently. "No, no, no, please, not my baby! Please!" she begged, her voice hoarse, breaking. She grabbed a stick from the ground, swinging it wildly. It smacked against the snow, too weak to make a difference. The wolf only growled louder, stepping closer, saliva dripping from its fangs. The baby kicked again, sharp and strong, as if pleading with her to keep fighting. "I won't let them hurt you," Emily whispered desperately. "I won't give up." Her tears blurred the sight of the predators circling, but her spirit clung to a thin thread of hope. One wolf lunged, its teeth grazing her coat. She screamed in agony as sharp claws raked across her arm. Blood seeped quickly, staining the snow crimson. The scent drove the pack wild. They howled, the chilling sound shaking her to her core. Emily's voice cracked into sobs. "Somebody, help us!" Her wheelchair rocked dangerously as she swung the stick again, this time striking one wolf on the snout. It yelped, but only for a moment. Rage replaced hesitation, and it came back fiercer. Emily's strength faltered, her vision blurred. She thought of Daniel, his cold eyes abandoning her. She thought of how unfair it was. After surviving the accident, after carrying her baby through pain, this was how it would end. The wolves closed in, their snarls louder, their bodies closer. One leapt, knocking the chair backward. Emily hit the ground with a cry, the cold searing through her bones. The pack circled, ready to strike. Her sobs filled the night. Her blood soaked into the snow. Her hope slipped away. Just as the largest wolf lowered itself, muscles coiling for the final attack, a gunshot ripped through the silence, startling the pack and shattering the darkness. The gunshot echoed across the frozen forest, bouncing from tree to tree. The wolves yelped, startled by the thunderous sound, and scattered back into the shadows. Emily's ears rang as she lay in the snow, her body trembling, blood soaking through her sleeve. Her wheelchair lay tipped over beside her, useless. She tried to lift her head, gasping for breath, terrified that the shot meant a new danger. From the trees emerged a tall figure dressed in heavy winter gear, carrying a rifle slung across his shoulder. His steps were steady, confident, purposeful. The beam of his flashlight swept over the clearing until it landed on her broken form. His voice cut through the icy silence. My God, are you all right? Emily flinched, her arms curling protectively around her swollen belly. She had learned the hard way not to trust men, especially after Daniel's betrayal. Her voice cracked with fear. Please, don't hurt me. The stranger quickly lowered his rifle, raising both hands to show he meant no harm. Easy, I'm not here to hurt you. My name is William Anderson. I was hunting when I heard the cries. I saw the wolves circling. You're safe now, I promise. His words carried warmth, but Emily's tears flowed harder. Safe, she whispered. He left me. My husband left me here to die. Her sobs broke, spilling into the freezing night. William's jaw tightened, his eyes dark with fury. He crouched beside her, assessing her injuries. Blood seeped steadily from the scratches on her arm, and her lips had turned pale from the cold. You're losing blood, he said firmly. We need to get you to a hospital right now. Emily shook her head weakly, despair in her eyes. I can't move, and my baby. She clutched her stomach, a sharp pain tearing through her. Panic flared in her voice. Something's wrong. I can feel it. William didn't waste a second. With surprising gentleness, he lifted her into his arms, cradling her as though she were made of glass. Emily gasped, unaccustomed to being held after months of confinement in her wheelchair. His strength felt solid, grounding, in stark contrast to the cold betrayal she had endured. Hold on, he urged, his breath fogging in the freezing air. I'll get you out of here. Just keep your eyes on me. You're not alone anymore. Through blurry tears, Emily studied his face lit by moonlight, the rugged jawline, the piercing eyes, the resolve that radiated from him. Something about his presence made her want to believe, just for a moment, that maybe she could survive this nightmare. The wolves howled again in the distance, but none dared return. William carried her swiftly toward a sleek, snow-covered SUV hidden among the trees. He gently placed her inside, wrapping her with blankets. Emily's hands trembled as she gripped his arm. Don't leave me like he did, she whispered. William looked into her eyes with fierce determination. I swear to you, I'm not that kind of man. The engine roared to life, headlights slicing through the forest. Emily closed her eyes, the pain in her body overwhelming, but for the first time that night, a fragile thread of hope flickered in her heart. Yet as they sped toward the hospital, she had no idea her nightmare was only beginning. The hospital lights were blinding, harsh against Emily's tear-streaked face. The sterile smell of antiseptic filled the air as William rushed her through the sliding doors, shouting for help. Nurses swarmed around, lifting Emily onto a gurney, their voices a blur of medical terms. She clutched William's hand until they pulled her away, her terrified eyes begging him not to disappear. I'll be right here, he called after her, his deep voice steady, yet his chest tightened with worry. He hated feeling powerless, watching as the fragile woman was wheeled through double doors that slammed shut behind her. Inside, Emily's world spun. The fluorescent lights above blurred as she fought waves of pain shooting from her stomach. Every kick from her baby felt weaker, like a plea fading into silence. Tears streamed down her cheeks as she whispered, Please, my baby, stay with me. Doctors worked urgently, their commands crisp and rapid. Needles pierced her skin, monitors beeped, and oxygen hissed. But nothing drowned out the dreadful stillness growing inside her. Her hand instinctively pressed against her belly, desperate to feel movement. For a long, agonizing moment, there was nothing. Outside, William paced the corridor, his fists clenched. His mind replayed the sight of Emily bleeding in the snow, the wolves, her cries of despair. Anger boiled inside him, not just at the cruelty of fate, but at the man who had abandoned her. No decent husband would leave his pregnant wife to die in the wilderness. Whoever Daniel Parker was, William silently vowed he would pay. After what felt like hours, a doctor emerged, his expression heavy. William rushed forward. How is she? The doctor hesitated, then spoke with quiet gravity. We did everything we could. The mother is stable, but the baby didn't make it. The words hung in the air like a death sentence. William's breath caught, his jaw tightened, his heart aching for the woman he had only just met yet already felt deeply connected to. He asked softly, Does she know? The doctor shook his head. She's weak, but conscious. You should be with her when we tell her. William entered the room quietly. Emily lay pale against the sheets, her hair damp with sweat, her eyes half open. When she saw him, her lips trembled. The baby? Is my baby okay? William's throat closed. He pulled a chair close, taking her fragile hand in his. "Emily," his voice broke, uncharacteristically unsteady. "The doctors, they tried, but your little one didn't survive." Her scream shattered the silence. It wasn't loud but raw, a sound of a mother's soul breaking. She clutched her stomach, sobbing uncontrollably. "No, no, 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 my baby." Her tears soaked the pillow as her body shook with grief. William's own eyes burned, but he tightened his grip on her hand. "I'm so sorry. I wish I could take this pain from you. But you're not alone, Emily. You still have a future." Her sobs slowed, though the grief still crushed her chest. She turned her face toward him, whispering, "Why did God let me live but take my child?" William had no answer. All he could do was sit with her, steady and silent, as her world collapsed around her. And deep inside Emily's broken heart, a single thought echoed. Daniel did this. The days after the hospital became a blur for Emily. She remained in her bed, staring at the white ceiling, her hand resting on the hollow curve of her belly. The silence of her womb tormented her. No more soft kicks, no more fluttering signs of life. Only emptiness. Nurses came and went, checking her vitals, offering food she never touched. Every time someone entered, she hoped against all reason that they would bring her child back, that the loss was just a nightmare. But the crib in her room stayed empty. William visited every day, bringing flowers or soft blankets to ease her stay. Yet Emily hardly spoke. Her voice had become a whisper, trapped in grief. One afternoon, he found her sitting in her wheelchair by the window, staring blankly at the snow falling outside. "Emily," he said gently, pulling up a chair. "You need to eat. Your body needs strength to heal." Her lips trembled. "Why heal? For what? My child is gone. My husband abandoned me. There's nothing left." Her eyes, swollen from endless tears, met his. "I should have died in that forest. It would have been easier." William's chest tightened. He had faced ruthless businessmen, survived brutal negotiations, even fought nature during his hunting expeditions. But nothing compared to the helplessness of watching this fragile woman break apart. "Don't say that," he urged softly. "You're alive for a reason, Emily. Maybe you can't see it now, but your story isn't over." She shook her head, her voice sharp with bitterness. "A story? What story? A crippled woman who lost her baby because her husband didn't want her anymore? That's not a story, William. That's a tragedy." Tears spilled again, and she buried her face in her hands. "I hear the wolves at night. I hear my baby crying, but when I wake up it's just silence. Do you know what that feels like?" Her sobs cut through the room. William leaned forward, placing a hand over hers. His voice was low, firm, but tender. "I don't know that pain, Emily. I can't pretend to. But I do know what it's like to be betrayed, to be left alone when you needed someone most. I've carried my own scars. They don't disappear, but they can heal, and so can you." She looked up, searching his face as if begging for a reason to believe. Yet the shadows in her heart pulled her down again. "Healing won't bring my baby back," she whispered. "No," William admitted, his eyes glistening with unspoken pain. "But living will honor the life you carried. Don't let Daniel's betrayal or this loss be the end of you. You're stronger than you realize." Emily's gaze drifted back to the falling snow. His words lingered, soft but insistent, fighting the despair that consumed her. Yet deep inside, a dark thought gnawed at her. Maybe Daniel was right. Maybe she was just a burden. She closed her eyes, tears sliding down her cheeks. "Maybe I don't deserve another chance," she murmured. But what Emily didn't know was that fate was already preparing to give her one. William could see the storm inside Emily's heart, the way despair chained her to the wheelchair as much as her injuries did. But he refused to let her fade away. Something about her, her quiet strength, the way she still breathed despite betrayal and tragedy, stirred something deep within him. One morning, he entered her hospital room carrying a folder. Emily sat slumped, her hair messy, her gaze empty. She barely acknowledged his presence. He pulled a chair beside her and opened the folder, sliding a series of papers onto the tray in front of her. "What's this?" she asked, her voice flat. "Options," William replied. "I spoke with some of the best doctors in the country. There's a treatment center in Denver. They specialize in advanced rehabilitation for spinal injuries. With therapy and surgery, there's a chance you could walk again." Emily blinked at him, disbelief flickering in her tired eyes. "Walk again?" She let out a bitter laugh. "That's impossible. Look at me, William. I'm broken. Even if I walked, what would it change? My child is gone. William leaned closer, his voice steady. It would change everything. You would have your freedom back. You would prove that Daniel didn't destroy you. And most of all, you would give yourself a chance to live, not just survive. Her throat tightened. The idea felt like a cruel dream, something too far away to grasp. Yet a tiny spark lit within her chest, a spark she hadn't felt since before the accident. She quickly smothered it. Why are you doing this? You don't even know me. William's gaze softened. Because no one deserves what happened to you. And because I believe in second chances. I've had my own. His words struck her, though she didn't ask what pain he carried. She turned away, staring at the window, tears forming. What if I fail? What if I try and it's all for nothing? Then you'll fail fighting, not giving up, he answered firmly. And I'll be with you every step. The sincerity in his tone cracked something in her walls. For weeks, she had lived in silence, convinced her life was over. Now this man, a stranger turned savior, was handing her a lifeline. Her lips trembled. I don't know if I'm strong enough. William reached across, gently lifting her chin so their eyes met. Emily, you survived being left to die in the snow. You faced wolves. You lost your child, and you're still breathing. That's strength most people will never understand. Don't waste it. Her tears spilled freely, but for the first time they weren't just tears of grief. They carried something else, something fragile. Hope. She whispered, almost to herself. Walk again. William gave a faint smile. Yes, walk again, and live again. Emily closed her eyes, taking a shaky breath. Her heart was still heavy, her body still weak, but deep inside, a decision was forming. Maybe she couldn't change the past, but perhaps, just perhaps, she could reclaim her future. And with that fragile spark, Emily's journey to rebirth had quietly begun. The rehabilitation center in Denver was nothing like the cold hospital rooms Emily had grown used to. The walls were painted in calming shades, and the scent of lavender replaced the sharp sting of antiseptic. But despite the warmth of the environment, Emily felt like she was stepping into a battlefield. Doctors and therapists welcomed her with professional smiles, explaining the process. Months of grueling physical therapy, surgeries, and endless exercises. William stood beside her, his hand resting lightly on her shoulder, silently assuring her she wasn't alone. On the first day, the therapist strapped braces to her legs and guided her toward parallel bars. Emily's heart pounded as she stared at her reflection in the mirror. Her legs looked foreign, lifeless, fragile. She gripped the bars tightly, her knuckles white. Whenever you're ready, the therapist encouraged. Emily tried. She pushed with all her strength, her arms trembling, sweat dripping down her face. Her body refused to obey. The pain was sharp, radiating through her spine. She collapsed back into the wheelchair, tears spilling uncontrollably. I can't do this, she cried, burying her face in her hands. It's too much. I'm not strong enough. From the corner, William stepped forward. His voice was calm but unwavering. Yes, you are. This is only the beginning. Nobody expects you to conquer it in one day. She shook her head violently. You don't understand. Every step feels like knives cutting into me. I'm already broken. Why torture myself more? William crouched beside her, meeting her tear-filled gaze. Because this pain is different. This pain is leading you somewhere better. The pain you felt in the forest, in the hospital, that was meant to destroy you. But this pain, this is building you. His words sank into her, though her heart still wavered. The therapist gently touched her arm. You'll fail many times before you succeed. That's how progress is made. You don't have to believe in yourself yet. Just try again tomorrow. The days turned into weeks. Each session drained her, left her in tears, but she kept showing up. Sometimes when she wanted to give up, she would catch William watching from the sidelines, his eyes filled with silent encouragement. Other times, she would hear her baby's laughter in her dreams and wake up with the determination to honor that little life. Slowly, painfully, progress came. She managed to stand for 5 seconds one day, her legs shaking violently. Another day, she took her first step with heavy braces. Each milestone was small, but for Emily it was monumental. Yet with every small victory came waves of exhaustion. She often cried herself to sleep, whispering to the memory of her child. I'm trying, sweetheart. I'm trying for us. William never left her side, He drove her to every session, celebrated every triumph, and comforted her through every breakdown. One night, after a particularly brutal day, Emily asked him through tears, "Why do you care so much about me?" His answer was simple, steady. "Because you remind me that survival is possible, and because you deserve to walk into a future brighter than your past." And for the first time, Emily believed maybe that future was within reach. While Emily fought through sweat and tears at the rehabilitation center, Daniel Parker was living the life he thought he had always deserved. Far from the snowy woods where he had abandoned his wife, he lounged in a luxury apartment in downtown Denver, sipping expensive whiskey. The city lights glittered outside the tall windows, a stark contrast to the dark emptiness he had left behind. Beside him was Vanessa, his young secretary and now his lover. Her laughter echoed through the penthouse as she draped herself across the couch, a glass of champagne in hand. "To us," she purred, clinking her glass against his. "To freedom, money, and finally being rid of that wheelchair wife of yours." Daniel smirked, feeling victorious. "Emily was holding me back, always whining, always needing help. I couldn't waste my best years pushing her around." His words dripped with cold selfishness. He leaned back, savoring the liquor as though it were the taste of triumph. Vanessa tilted her head, eyeing him with feigned admiration. "And now all her assets are still in your name, right? You'll inherit everything once her absence is confirmed." Daniel's eyes gleamed. "Exactly. The police will assume she got lost or attacked by animals. No one will suspect a thing. Soon enough I'll be free and wealthy." But beneath his smug expression, a trace of unease flickered. Every so often, he imagined her voice screaming his name in the woods, the way her eyes had begged him not to leave. He drowned the memory with another gulp of whiskey. Vanessa slid closer, her hand brushing his arm. "Forget her. You have me now, and we can build something far better." Daniel forced a smile. He wanted to believe her words. He wanted to believe he was finally in control. But even in her embrace, something gnawed at him, a strange restlessness, as though the past refused to die quietly. Later that night, he sat alone on the balcony, staring at the city below. The wind was sharp, carrying a faint chill that reminded him of the forest. He clenched his fists, muttering under his breath, "She's gone. She has to be gone." Meanwhile, Vanessa scrolled through his financial accounts, her eyes calculating. She had her own agenda, though Daniel was too blinded by arrogance to notice. To her, Daniel was just a stepping stone, a man foolish enough to betray his wife for lust and money. In his mind, Daniel pictured the future: parties, expensive cars, freedom without responsibility. He convinced himself the nightmare was over, that Emily was nothing more than a memory swallowed by the woods. But fate was cruel to men like Daniel. What he didn't know, what he couldn't even imagine, was that Emily was alive. Not only alive, but slowly reclaiming her strength, her dignity, and her will to fight. And when their paths crossed again, it would not be the weak wife in a wheelchair who stood before him. It would be a woman reborn, ready to make him face every sin he thought was buried. The therapy room smelled faintly of disinfectant and sweat, filled with the sound of machines humming and patients groaning through their exercises. For weeks, Emily had been coming here every morning, guided by the same therapist, pushed by William's steady encouragement. Progress had been slow, often heartbreaking. Some days she collapsed in tears, convinced she would never move again. But today felt different. The braces strapped tightly around her legs felt like armor. The parallel bars gleamed under the bright lights, waiting for her to try again. Emily's hands gripped the cold steel, her palms damp with nervous sweat. The therapist crouched nearby, adjusting the supports. "Remember, Emily?" he said calmly. "It's not about how fast you do it. It's about trying, one step at a time." William stood a few feet away, his arms crossed but his eyes locked on her. He didn't speak, but the determination in his gaze poured strength into her. Emily took a shaky breath, her heart pounding in her chest. She pushed. At first, nothing happened. Her body resisted, stiff and stubborn. Pain shot through her spine, making her wince. But then slowly, with every ounce of willpower, her body began to rise. Her knees trembled violently, her arms shook, but she was lifting herself. "Come on, Emily," the therapist encouraged. "You're almost there." Her face twisted with effort, sweat rolling down her temple. She thought of the wolves, of Daniel's cold eyes as he abandoned her, of the empty crib that haunted her dreams. Rage and grief fueled her muscles. And then, it happened. Emily stood, her legs wobbled beneath her, weak and unsure, but she was upright. Her eyes widened as she saw her reflection in the mirror across the room. No longer a woman trapped in a chair, but someone fighting her way back. William's breath caught. He stepped forward, his voice hushed with awe. "You're standing, Emily. You did it." Her chest heaved as tears spilled down her cheeks. I'm standing." Her voice broke, trembling with disbelief. For the first time since the accident, she looked at herself not as broken, but as a survivor. The therapist steadied her as she held the position. "Don't rush. Feel the strength in your legs. Remember this moment. This is proof you're stronger than your pain." Emily's grip tightened on the bars, her knuckles white. Her legs threatened to give out, but she refused to let go. For a full minute, she stood on her own. Every second felt like a lifetime, every heartbeat echoing triumph. Finally, her body collapsed back into the wheelchair, but she was smiling through tears. "I did it," she whispered, her voice filled with wonder. "I really did it." William crouched in front of her, his eyes glistening. "This is just the beginning. One day soon, you won't just stand, you'll walk." Emily nodded, her spirit reignited. For the first time in months, hope didn't feel fragile, it felt real. And deep inside, she silently vowed, Daniel would one day see her like this and regret every cruel choice he had made. Daniel Parker sat at the polished mahogany desk in his penthouse, tapping impatiently at his laptop. The city skyline glowed outside, but his attention was fixed on the financial documents in front of him. His wife's fortune, Emily's inheritance from her late parents, was still locked under her name. He needed legal confirmation of her death to claim it fully. Until then, he was restless. Vanessa strolled in wearing a silk robe, carrying 2 glasses of wine. She set one beside him, leaning over his shoulder to peek at the screen. "Still stressing over the money?" she teased, her tone playful but her eyes sharp. Daniel's jaw clenched. "It's not money, it's freedom. That fortune belongs to me. I was her husband. I endured her weakness, her wheelchair, her endless needs. I deserve this." Vanessa's lips curled into a sly smile. "Of course you do, darling. But patience, remember? The world already assumes she vanished. Give it a little more time, and no one will question it." He exhaled, running a hand through his hair. But deep inside, Emily's face still haunted him, her cries in the forest, her desperate plea. He shook it off, drowning the memory with a gulp of wine. Vanessa perched on the desk, crossing her legs. "In the meantime," she said smoothly, "why don't we start shifting smaller assets? Her stocks, her properties, those can be handled with the right signatures." Daniel raised an eyebrow. "How do you know that?" She smirked, tilting her glass. "I worked in your office for 2 years, Daniel. I know more about your wife's portfolio than you think, and I also know a few lawyers who bend the rules for the right price." Her confidence sent a thrill through him. He leaned back, smiling for the first time that evening. "That's why I keep you around. You're not just beautiful, you're smart." But Vanessa's smile didn't reach her eyes. Inside, she had her own plans. She wasn't interested in being his partner forever. Once the assets were moved, she intended to take her share and vanish, leaving Daniel with nothing but regret. As they plotted, a storm brewed outside, snow whipping against the windows. Vanessa scribbled notes, calculating percentages, while Daniel fantasized about his new life. He pictured himself on yachts, at parties, surrounded by luxury, without the burden of Emily's fragile body slowing him down. What neither of them knew was that Emily was alive, fighting every day to rebuild herself. Each step she took brought her closer to the truth, and when that truth came, it would shatter Daniel's illusion of victory. Vanessa leaned down, whispering against his ear, "Soon, love, everything you've ever wanted will be yours." Daniel smirked, pulling her close. "No," he corrected, arrogance dripping from his tone. "Everything I've ever deserved will be mine." But in that very moment, miles away, Emily Parker took her first steps without support. Proof that Daniel's darkest secret was about to resurface and destroy him. The rehabilitation center buzzed with quiet determination, patients pushing through pain, therapists offering steady encouragement. But on this particular morning, all eyes seemed to be on one woman. Emily Parker stood at the edge of the training mat, her braces removed, her wheelchair set aside. For weeks, she had been preparing for this moment. Today, she would try to walk without support. Her heart pounded like a drum inside her chest. Sweat already dotted her palms before she even moved. She glanced at the mirror across the room, staring at the woman reflected back. No longer the broken figure Daniel had left in the woods, but someone scarred, fragile, yet filled with something new, determination. Her therapist stood nearby, ready to catch her if she fell. William leaned against the wall, arms crossed, but his eyes never left her. His gaze carried no pity, only belief. That was what made her knees tremble. Not weakness, but the weight of wanting to prove him right. "Whenever you're ready," the therapist said softly. Emily inhaled deeply, gripping nothing but her own willpower. Slowly she shifted her weight forward. Her right foot slid an inch, then another. The movement felt foreign, as though she were borrowing someone else's legs. Pain shot up her spine, sharp and demanding, but she didn't stop. One step. She gasped, nearly collapsing, but the therapist steadied her with a hand on her elbow. Emily bit down on her lip until she tasted blood. She couldn't stop now. She wouldn't. Another step. Her legs trembled violently, but they held. Her chest rose and fell with ragged breaths. She looked up and caught William's eyes. They glistened, not with pity, but pride. His lips curled into the smallest smile, and in that smile, Emily found strength she didn't know she had. "Come on, Emily," he urged quietly, his voice steady. "Show yourself what you're capable of." Tears blurred her vision, but she pushed forward. One step became two, then three. The room around her faded. All she heard was her own heartbeat and William's unwavering voice in the background. Finally, she reached the chair at the end of the mat. Her knees buckled and she collapsed onto it, sobbing uncontrollably. But these weren't tears of grief. They were tears of victory. "I did it," she whispered, her hands shaking. "I walked." William approached, crouching in front of her. He took her trembling hands in his. "Yes, you did. And this is only the beginning. Soon, you'll walk out of this place on your own." Emily's tears flowed harder, but for the first time in months, they felt cleansing. "I thought I'd never feel this again," she admitted. "I thought my life ended in that forest." William's expression softened, his voice low but fierce. "Your life didn't end, Emily. It started over, and you're stronger now than you've ever been." Her chest swelled with emotion. She didn't know what the future held, but in that moment, she believed him. She wasn't just surviving anymore. She was living. And with every step forward, she came closer to the day Daniel would face the woman he thought he had destroyed. Daniel Parker lounged in his penthouse one evening, scrolling through his phone while Vanessa prepared drinks in the kitchen. The city lights flickered through the glass walls, but for the first time in weeks, he couldn't enjoy the view. A strange unease had taken root in his chest. He paused when a headline flashed across his feed. "Unidentified woman rescued from wilderness, fights for life in Denver hospital." His thumb hovered over the screen, his pulse quickening. The article didn't name her, but the details clawed at him. A woman found injured in the woods, badly mauled by animals, discovered by a wealthy hunter. Daniel's breath caught. Could it be? No, it was impossible. He had left Emily too far in, too weak, too helpless. The wolves had been closing in. There was no way she survived. Still, the thought gnawed at him. Vanessa returned, setting a glass of wine on the table. "What's wrong? You look like you've seen a ghost." Daniel quickly locked his phone and forced a smirk. "Nothing. Just business." But his mind refused to quiet. That night, as Vanessa slept beside him, Daniel lay awake, staring at the ceiling. He kept hearing Emily's voice, the way she had screamed his name in the forest. What if someone had found her? What if she was alive and telling her story? The next morning, he made a few calls to contacts at local hospitals. Most dismissed him politely, saying patient records were confidential. But one receptionist let slip that a woman fitting Emily's description had been admitted weeks ago, before being transferred to a rehabilitation center. Daniel's hand shook as he ended the call. His heart hammered against his ribs. "She's alive," he whispered to himself, panic flooding his veins. When Vanessa noticed his pale face, she frowned. "Daniel, what's going on? You've been acting strange since last night." He snapped at her, louder than he intended. "Nothing. Mind your own business." Her eyes narrowed. She wasn't used to being shut out. But Daniel couldn't let her see his fear, not yet. He needed to think. If Emily really was alive, everything he had built with Vanessa, every plan for the fortune, was in jeopardy. For the first time, the image of his wife didn't just haunt him, it threatened him. Later, while Vanessa was out shopping, Daniel poured himself another drink and stared at his reflection in the mirror. His once confident eyes now looked wild, hunted. He muttered under his breath, "If she's alive, I'll find her. I can't let her ruin this." He didn't know Emily was no longer the fragile woman he had abandoned. She was regaining her strength, her dignity, her will to fight. The woman he once thought was powerless was transforming into his greatest enemy. Daniel slammed his glass onto the counter, shards scattering across the floor. For the first time, he realized his greatest mistake wasn't leaving Emily in the woods, it was underestimating her will to survive. Winter melted slowly into spring, and with it, Emily's world began to thaw as well. The trees outside the rehabilitation center blossomed with delicate pinks and whites, a sharp contrast to the lifeless forest where she had nearly perished months ago. Each day brought new strength, more steps, longer distances, less reliance on braces. For the first time in a long time, she felt alive. William had been there through it all. He was there when she collapsed from exhaustion, when she screamed through the pain, when she finally walked 10 steps on her own. He clapped the loudest, smiled the widest, but never once treated her like a fragile soul. To him, she wasn't broken, she was powerful. One evening, after a particularly grueling session, Emily sat outside on the bench overlooking the city lights. Her legs ached, but she smiled faintly at the progress she had made. William joined her, carrying 2 cups of hot tea. "You're walking further every day," he said, handing her a cup. "The Emily I see now is unstoppable." She chuckled softly, though her eyes glistened. "Unstoppable? I cried 3 times today during therapy." "That's what makes you unstoppable," he replied gently. "You fall, but you keep getting back up." Silence lingered between them, comfortable yet heavy with unspoken words. Emily's fingers tightened around the warm cup. "William," she said quietly, "you've done more for me than anyone else. You saved my life. You believed in me when I didn't believe in myself. I don't even know how to thank you." His gaze softened, his voice low. "You don't need to thank me. Watching you rise again has been more than enough." But there was something in his tone, something deeper that made her chest tighten. She turned toward him, searching his face. His eyes didn't hold pity or obligation. They held something else. "William," she whispered, unsure. He took a breath, his jaw tightening as though weighing every word. Finally, he spoke. "Emily, I told myself I wouldn't say this, not while you were still healing. But the truth is, somewhere along the way, I started caring for you in ways I didn't expect. It's more than wanting you to walk again. I want you to live again, with me." Her lips parted, her heart racing. For a moment, she was frozen. After Daniel's betrayal, she never thought she could trust another man, let alone open her heart. Yet sitting here, looking into William's steady, sincere eyes, she felt something stir. Something she thought had died with her baby. Tears welled in her eyes. "William, I don't know if I'm ready." He reached for her hand, holding it gently but firmly. "Then don't be ready. Just know that I'll be here, however long it takes. You don't need to rush. But I had to tell you, because you deserve to know you are loved again." Emily's tears slipped down her cheeks, but this time they carried no bitterness. They were tears of healing, of something fragile and new being born inside her heart. And for the first time since the betrayal, Emily realized love might not be over for her. It might just be beginning. Daniel Parker sat in the back of his sleek black car, his jaw tight as he listened to the report from a private investigator he had hired in secret. The man slid a folder across the leather seat. Inside were photos, grainy but unmistakable. Emily, alive, walking with braces supported by therapists. And next to her in several shots was William Anderson, the billionaire Daniel had only heard whispers about. Daniel's grip tightened on the folder until his knuckles whitened. His wife, the woman he had left for dead, was not only alive, but walking again. Rage burned through him, mixed with panic. If she came forward, everything would crumble. The fortune, the lie he had built with Vanessa, his spotless reputation. It would all be destroyed. "How long have they known each other?" Daniel demanded, his voice sharp. "Since the rescue, sir," the investigator replied. "And from what I've gathered, Anderson has taken a personal interest." They're close. Close. The word stabbed him. Daniel slammed the folder shut, his face darkening. She was supposed to be gone. She was supposed to disappear forever. The investigator hesitated. "Do you want me to handle this?" Daniel's eyes flicked up, cold and calculating. For a moment, silence stretched. Then he shook his head. "Not yet. I need to see her with my own eyes. I need to know what she's planning." That night, back at the penthouse, Vanessa noticed his distracted state. "What's wrong with you lately?" she asked, draping herself across him. "You've been tense. Is there something you're not telling me?" Daniel pushed her off roughly, his patience thin. "Just mind your own business, Vanessa." Her eyes narrowed. She was used to his arrogance, but tonight it carried something else. Fear. She made a mental note to dig deeper. Meanwhile, Daniel poured himself another drink, his thoughts spiraling. He replayed the night in the woods, the way Emily had begged him, the sound of wolves circling. He had been so certain she wouldn't survive. And yet here she was, standing again, protected by a man with more power and influence than he could ever match. He slammed the glass down, shards scattering across the counter. "If she thinks she can ruin me, she's wrong," he growled. The next morning, Daniel made his first move. He called a lawyer, inquiring discreetly about Emily's legal standing. When he heard her assets were still secure under her name, fury consumed him. "She's alive, she's stronger, and she's standing in my way," he muttered. He stared at the city skyline, his reflection glaring back at him in the glass. "If Emily wants war, I'll give her war." What he didn't realize was that Emily wasn't the same broken woman he had abandoned. With William by her side, she was preparing not just to survive, but to fight back. And when Daniel finally came face to face with her, it would not be the reunion he imagined. It would be the beginning of his downfall. Spring gave way to summer, and with it, Emily's body transformed. The woman who once trembled just standing was now walking confidently through the halls of the rehabilitation center. Each step was still heavy with effort, but it was hers. Every stride was a declaration that she was no longer Daniel's victim. William noticed the change immediately. Her shoulders no longer slumped with defeat, her eyes no longer dulled with despair. Instead, determination radiated from her. She trained harder than ever, staying after hours to push her limits. When therapists urged her to rest, she shook her head. "I'm not just learning to walk," she whispered to herself. "I'm learning to fight." One evening, William invited her back to his estate, a sprawling property overlooking the mountains. As they sat on the terrace, sipping tea under the fading sunset, he finally asked the question that had been weighing on him. "Emily," he said softly, "what do you want to do now? You've regained your strength. You have choices again. You don't have to look back if you don't want to." She looked at him, her expression steady but pained. "I can't pretend Daniel doesn't exist. He left me to die. He took my baby from me, and I know he won't stop until he gets what he wants, my family's fortune. If I stay silent, he wins. If I hide, he controls the story." Her hands tightened around the teacup. "I need to face him, William. Not just for me, but for every woman who has ever been abandoned, betrayed, or treated as less than human. He needs to see that I'm still standing, and he needs to answer for what he did." William studied her, his heart swelling with admiration. She wasn't just surviving anymore. She was rising. "If that's what you want, you won't do it alone," he promised. "I'll use every resource I have to help you." And he did. Over the next weeks, William connected her with lawyers, investigators, and journalists. Piece by piece, they built a case. Proof of Daniel's infidelity, evidence of his attempts to seize her assets, and testimonies from people who had witnessed his cruelty. But Emily knew legal documents weren't enough. She wanted the world to see the truth with their own eyes. She wanted Daniel exposed, stripped of the mask he wore so easily in public. Her plan began to take shape. A charity gala hosted by William, filled with Denver's most influential figures, politicians, business leaders, and media. Daniel prided himself on appearances. He wouldn't resist attending, especially if he thought it could elevate his status. That would be the perfect stage for his downfall. Late one night, as Emily reviewed the evidence on her laptop, William placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder. "Are you ready for this?" he asked. Emily met his gaze, her eyes fierce. "I've been ready since the night he left me in the woods." And for the first time, Daniel Parker had no idea the trap was already being set by the very woman he thought he had destroyed. Daniel Parker admired himself in the mirror of his penthouse bedroom, straightening the knot of his silk tie. The tuxedo hugged his frame perfectly, projecting the image he wanted the world to see. Wealthy, charming, untouchable. Tonight's charity gala at William Anderson's estate would be filled with the city's elite, and Daniel intended to make an impression. Behind him, Vanessa lounged on the bed, scrolling through her phone, her champagne glass resting precariously on the nightstand. "You're really going to this thing?" she asked, her voice tinged with boredom. Daniel smirked. "Of course, these events are where deals are made, reputations are built. If William Anderson is hosting, I need to be there. Connections like his could open doors for me." Vanessa rolled her eyes but didn't argue. She had grown accustomed to Daniel's hunger for power and status. It was part of what made him attractive to her, though lately his restless energy had begun to irritate her. As Daniel slipped on his cufflinks, he glanced at her reflection. "And besides," he added, "events like these are perfect for cementing my image. The city needs to see me as successful, sophisticated, a man who belongs in the inner circle." He didn't say the rest out loud. A man no one would suspect of abandoning his pregnant wife in the woods. Vanessa smirked. "Just don't drink too much. You get sloppy when you're drunk." He ignored her jab, focused instead on the thought of shaking hands with influential businessmen, maybe even catching the attention of politicians. For Daniel, appearances were everything. And tonight, he planned to shine. Still, in the back of his mind, unease lingered. He remembered the investigator's report, the possibility that Emily was alive. The thought gnawed at him, but he shoved it down. If she really had survived, she would have come for him already. Tonight was about power, not ghosts. As he buttoned his jacket, Vanessa approached, draping her arms around his shoulders. "You look good," she purred, "like a man in control." Daniel's smirk widened. "That's because I am in control." An hour later, his sleek black car pulled up to the grand entrance of William Anderson's estate. The mansion glowed with golden light, its windows alive with laughter and music. Photographers snapped pictures as elite guests stepped out of luxury vehicles, their gowns and tuxedos sparkling under the chandeliers. Daniel adjusted his cufflinks again, his confidence surging. He could already picture himself inside, charming investors, impressing the media, and maybe even catching William's attention. Vanessa linked her arm with his as they walked toward the entrance. "Try not to embarrass me," she teased lightly. Daniel chuckled. "Darling, I don't get embarrassed. I make people remember me." He had no idea how true those words would be. Tonight, people would remember him, but not for his charm or sophistication. They would remember him as the man exposed, stripped of his lies, standing face to face with the wife he thought he had buried in the snow. The grand ballroom of William Anderson's estate glittered with chandeliers, the air alive with music, clinking glasses, and the murmur of powerful voices. Politicians, business moguls, and celebrities filled the room, their laughter echoing beneath the vaulted ceilings. The gala was more than a charity event. It was a stage, and William had orchestrated every detail with precision. Daniel Parker walked in with Vanessa on his arm, flashing his practiced smile as cameras clicked. He moved through the crowd confidently, shaking hands, exchanging empty pleasantries, pretending he belonged among the elite. Vanessa clung to him, her eyes scanning the room hungrily for opportunities. Daniel felt in control again, the unease of recent weeks fading under the glow of admiration. Guests complimented his appearance, asked about his ventures, and he soaked up every word. For a moment, he believed the narrative he had crafted. Daniel Parker, successful businessman, desirable partner, respected guest. Across the ballroom, William stood near the stage, his gaze calm but sharp. Tonight was the night. Emily, dressed in a gown that shimmered under the lights, stood hidden behind the curtains, her heart racing. Her legs trembled, not from weakness but from the weight of the moment. Months of pain, grief, and recovery had brought her here. She touched the necklace around her throat, a simple pendant that once belonged to her mother. It grounded her. She wasn't just confronting her husband, she was reclaiming her life, her dignity, her voice. William appeared beside her, his hand resting gently on her arm. "Are you ready?" he asked softly. Emily swallowed hard, nodding. "More than ready." Moments later, William stepped onto the stage, microphone in hand. "Ladies and gentlemen," he began, his deep voice commanding attention, "thank you for joining us tonight. This evening is about resilience, about honoring those who rise again despite impossible odds." The crowd applauded politely, sipping champagne. Daniel listened with half-interest, chatting with a banker nearby. But then William's next words silenced the room. "I want to introduce someone who embodies that spirit. A woman who has faced betrayal, tragedy, and unimaginable loss, yet stands here tonight stronger than ever. Please welcome Emily Parker." Gasps rippled through the crowd as the curtains parted. Emily stepped forward, her gown flowing, her steps steady and sure. Every head turned. Some recognized her immediately, others whispered in shock, but none were more stunned than Daniel. His face drained of color, his glass slipping from his hand and shattering on the marble floor. "Emily?" he whispered, frozen in disbelief. Emily's eyes locked onto his, not with fear, but with unshakable resolve. The room seemed to hold its breath as she reached the center of the stage. She took the microphone from William, her voice steady despite the storm inside her. "Yes, Daniel, it's me, the wife you left in the woods to die." The ballroom erupted in murmurs, gasps, and shocked stares. Daniel's mask cracked, his arrogance melting into panic as the world turned to watch him. And in that moment, Emily knew the stage was hers, and his downfall had just begun. The ballroom was silent, except for the faint hum of the chandeliers. All eyes fixed on Emily, her voice echoing through the microphone. Daniel stood frozen near the center of the room, pale and rigid, as if the ground beneath him had shattered. Emily's hands trembled slightly, but her voice was strong. "Months ago, my husband drove me deep into the forest. I was 7 months pregnant, in a wheelchair, completely dependent on him. He told me we were going for fresh air. But his plan was not to care for me. His plan was to abandon me, to let the wolves finish what he didn't have the courage to do himself." Gasps rippled through the crowd. Guests turned toward Daniel, their eyes narrowing with judgment. Cameras flashed as whispers swirled across the ballroom like wildfire. Daniel shook his head violently, his voice cracking. "That's a lie! She's trying to ruin me. She's unstable. She always has been." Emily lifted her chin, unshaken. "If I were unstable, Daniel, then explain these." She gestured toward a projector screen. William clicked a remote and a series of photos appeared, images captured by the investigator they had hired. Pictures of Daniel with Vanessa entering hotels, signing suspicious documents, evidence of his betrayal. The room erupted in shocked murmurs. Vanessa stiffened, her face flushing as guests recognized her from the photographs. Emily's voice cut through the noise. "While I fought for my life in the snow, while I lost the child I carried, Daniel was here. With her, planning to steal everything my parents left me, to erase me and live as if I never existed." Her words landed like daggers. Women in the crowd clutched their pearls, men muttered curses under their breath. One older woman whispered loudly enough for many to hear, "Monster." Daniel lunged forward, desperate, sweat dripping down his forehead. "She's lying. She's manipulating all of you. But William stepped between them, his voice steady and commanding. "Enough. Emily doesn't stand here alone. We have the financial records, the legal testimonies, and proof of your affair. Every document is ready to be turned over to the authorities. This is not just her word against yours. It's the truth against your lies." Daniel's mouth opened, but no words came out. The crowd booed, disgusted murmurs echoing through the room. Vanessa slowly slipped away from his side, her eyes cold, her loyalty shattered. Emily's eyes never left Daniel's. Her voice dropped, quieter now but sharper than steel. "You left me to die, Daniel. You thought I was weak, but I am still here. And you," she paused, her gaze piercing him, "you are nothing but a coward." The crowd erupted in applause, some rising to their feet, others shouting words of encouragement toward Emily. Cameras flashed relentlessly, capturing Daniel's disgrace. Daniel staggered back, his face pale, his body trembling. For the first time, the man who believed himself untouchable was truly cornered. And as police officers stepped into the ballroom, summoned by William's quiet call earlier that evening, Daniel realized his empire of lies was crumbling faster than he could breathe. The police officers moved swiftly through the ballroom, their badges gleaming under the chandeliers. Daniel stumbled backward, his face drenched in sweat as the crowd parted to let the officers through. "Wait, this is a mistake. You can't arrest me," he shouted, his voice breaking. One officer stepped forward, pulling out a warrant. "Daniel Parker, you are under arrest for fraud, conspiracy, and attempted murder. You have the right to remain silent." Gasps filled the room, followed by cheers. Guests who once shook Daniel's hand now turned their backs on him. He twisted toward Vanessa, desperate. Tell them this isn't true." But Vanessa only smirked, stepping away. "Sorry, Daniel. You thought you were using me, but I was using you all along." She slipped her hand into another man's arm, leaving Daniel trembling in betrayal. As the officers cuffed him, Daniel's eyes darted across the room until they locked onto Emily. His face twisted with rage and desperation. "Emily, please. I made a mistake. You're my wife. You're supposed to stand by me." Emily's gaze was steady, her voice calm but cutting. "You stopped being my husband the moment you left me in the snow. I stood by you through everything, but you chose greed, lust, and cruelty over love, and now you'll stand alone." The crowd erupted into applause, their support wrapping around her like a warm embrace. Daniel screamed as he was dragged away, his cries echoing down the marble hall, growing weaker until they disappeared. The ballroom slowly returned to its music and chatter, but now Emily was the center of admiration. Guests approached her with words of respect, some even with tears in their eyes. She had not only survived, she had triumphed. Later that evening, after the last guests had departed, Emily stood on the terrace, overlooking the city lights. The night was cool, the stars glittering above, and for the first time in months, her heart felt light. William joined her, his presence steady, comforting. He didn't speak at first, simply stood beside her, letting the silence heal what words could not. Finally he turned to her, his voice low and tender. "It's over, Emily. You're free." She closed her eyes, a tear slipping down her cheek, but this time it was a tear of release, not grief. "I thought I'd never feel this again. Peace, hope, a future." William reached for her hand, intertwining his fingers with hers. "The future is yours now, and if you'll let me, I'd like to be part of it." Emily looked at him, her heart swelling. For months he had been her protector, her strength, her light in the darkness. And now she realized he was also her second chance at love. "Yes," she whispered, her voice trembling with emotion, "I want that too." In the months that followed, Emily continued her recovery, her steps growing stronger until she no longer needed support. She and William built a life together filled with laughter, respect, and healing. And one day Emily held a newborn baby in her arms, proof that even after the deepest loss, life could bloom again. Emily Parker had been abandoned, betrayed, and left for dead. But in the end, she rose stronger, found love, and proved that no betrayal could destroy a woman's will to survive. So that's it, my wonderful friends. The story has come to its end. And if you're still here with me right now, it means something in this journey touched your heart in a very real way. Emily's pain, her fight, and her rebirth are not just drama on a screen. They are a mirror of life itself, where betrayal, loss, and injustice can break us, but never define us. The Stoics often said, "We suffer more in imagination than in reality." Emily could have let her suffering consume her, but she chose instead to act, to rise, and to create a new life. That is the healing we all need to remember. Our circumstances may not be our fault, but how we rise from them is always our choice. Another Stoic truth is, the obstacle is the way. What nearly killed Emily became the very fire that made her stronger. Maybe in your own life you carry betrayal, grief, or scars others don't see. Let this story remind you that even the darkest night can be the soil where hope grows again. Healing does not erase pain, it transforms it into wisdom and strength. So tonight, ask yourself, where is my forest? Where did I feel abandoned or broken? And how can I, like Emily, choose to rise anyway? If this story touched you, please give it a like, share it with someone who needs encouragement today, and don't forget to subscribe to our channel. Because here, we tell stories that remind you, you are stronger than your pain, and you are never truly alone. Stay with us, friends. The next story might be the one that gives you exactly the hope you've been searching for.